Ladies and gentlemen, it's another castover from your boy Pronogo. Pronogo to the polls. Aw, shit. Why didn't I think about that? Like a year ago, and that was a meme. Ah, Jesus. That was actually like 6 years ago. I'm just an idiot. All right. Listen, let's first of all, let's rise to the occasion with my standing desk technology. Let's admire Blizzard's code. For some reason, thinking I'm 28 downloaded in my own map reminds me of those BattleNet hacks that let you spoof your name and set your download to any number you wanted. So you could do like /DL69. Oh, that's a command. Holy shit, that's a throwback. I really am a boomer. Let's get into Cellbound. It's a scenario map I made a while ago for one of the past map craps. So you might remember it. It might be of interest. We're going to talk about asymmetric design, imbalanced teams, free-for-alls in that sense. And we're going to talk for as long as we can before one of the AIs wins. One of the teams wins. So a brief primer. We do have a T-green, I believe, Protoss up here. That is actually the player's position. They are in a notoriously safer spot, notably safer spot compared to Golden Souls' Zerg player. So if you thought that that was unfair, you might be a bit more inclined over here. We do have a Zerg player who is Scarlet and a Protoss player who's Bedazzled Blue. And these guys are of the same ilk. They are of the same force. And then down here we have, I believe, Platinum Purple. Yes, that is correct. I am right about the map that I made. Those guys are some Shadow Terrans from the Eviz sect of the Nidus Trinity. So y'all can bask in their glory. N is here. There's a small number of pre-placed elements here that you'll notice. There are two supply structures, or two Ovoleths for Zerg, a supply structure, and a town center for everybody else, obviously, and then at least a small group of, like, basically 2 supply worth of units for each player. So I believe these guys have 2 Zethra cores and a Hydra. That is correct. And then there's obviously a cohort of Maverick. That's 2 supply. The Ecclesiast is mostly just to separate this guy from having a Zealot, so that he doesn't just have the same thing that the player has, but whatever. It's actually far less useful, since it's not like he can get the shields of his Zerg allies units in the event of a rush. So that's pretty funny. We do have an expansion going down already. So asymmetric design. Obviously, this is something that you don't see too often in these types of scenarios, especially since previously in the castovers, if we weren't casting like Golden Souls specifically, we were usually doing a castover of a melee map, right? So talking of asymmetric design, what it makes me think of is, again, going back to our conversation about pre-placed units in the first place, targeting fairness. In this case, we actually don't have any disparity between pre-placed elements, and we're instead balancing the fact that this is a 1v2v1 around the map. We're using the map to achieve some element of fair balance. We have the 2 players who are not on the same team on basically opposite sides of the map, and between them, essentially caught in the crossfire between the 2 of them, is the team of 2. Now, these guys have a chance to snowball, particularly if they are able to, like, have one player be aggressive against the neighbor that is not allied with them. So in this case, it would be like the Zerg getting aggressive against the North Protoss, and the South Protoss helping with a couple of units, but mostly defending, trying to hold off the full front of these guys. If they do that, they can easily snowball, but they're not that coordinated because they're AI and they're dumb, and this is Brood War, and we can't really make them significantly more intelligent yet. So while we wait to do that in a new engine, which is taking shape as we speak, the other way to go about doing stuff is obviously to assume that the AI is just not going to play massively optimally, right? And that's essentially what we're seeing take place over here. So obviously the resources are also not exactly one-to-one. We do have a very large number of Zealots come out here, which is exactly the opener that I was hoping for. This guy is overly focused on trying to get gas, or no, he's just idling a scribe waiting for money to expand, I think. So he's trying to expand it behind the attack that is about to commence. However, there's already some static defense over here, so the odds of him actually smashing this base are a little bit slim. And this is a base where I kind of think this is kind of a linchpin position. If this base is taken by the Protoss up here, he has a much easier time sieging this area down here where the Zerg are, and vice versa. If the Zerg take it and are able to hold on to it, that's a good staging ground for attacking the North player as well. Meanwhile, we do have the expansion for all players besides the North Protoss, who has decided to go very much a focus towards that Legion style, spamming a bunch of Zealots and stuff. So There will be a single simulacrum splitting. However, it will not be long for this world. Now, we do have the vassals. Those are going to deny any lethality from this because he only has zealots and legionnaires. I'm not really buying the idea that he's even going to be able to rip apart this base in the first place. But you know what? Things are happening. And maybe he can do something. But I think all of these units have just been peppered too much. I don't even see any Droleth corpses down here either, so it does look pretty much like he's already going to be down for the count. Now that he's under attack by air units with his base, he should start to pivot towards some photon cannons and things like that. However, that's assuming he can survive long enough. Now, while this is going on, the Terran player is consolidating their opening. They have a large number of production structures. They have their expansion. They're starting to get scrapyards and get into that sort of mid-table of the Terran technology that is available to them. So they are a threat, and they might just walk in here, particularly since there's no static defense, and very few units. They could just absolutely annihilate these guys down here. It's not really the same for the Zerg because they were able to build some static defense. So while we see a very early potential death where one of the players might just be completely out of the game at this point, it's also kind of unlikely that the skirmish is going to end there. It really depends on how soon the Terrans act and attack, and they might just be a little bit less aggressive, less active than they really ought to be. And this is a case where you have to invoke game theory. Anybody who's familiar with game theory might know that, you know, you do have a situation, eventually anyway, where you have to try to decide what to do based on any number of potential circumstances. So some obvious cases would be like, oh, because of X, Y, and Z, I'm going to, you know, make some changes to the decision-making that I do. And because we have, you know, a player down south, we are going to, I'm going to basically pretend that he's my ally and not attack him because there's a team of two. So the odds of me losing in that context are very high. So I absolutely need to make some changes based on that. And essentially play a game within a game. And the game within a game here is my AI ally is the bottom player, so don't attack him. And instead try to repel the aggression put on by the team down here. And they have played to their win condition of just isolating and picking down a fight with one single player. And these guys, because they were a bit slower, didn't really threaten too much until just now. And even then, they're kind of distorted with some of their attack force being somewhat asynchronous. Now that being said, there are still more units on the way. And they do have a large number of production structures, even though they don't really seem to have a massive amount of tech. They will be able to produce, you know, some tanks and stuff if they so choose. And they are certainly, you know, putting the hurt on for some of these units. It doesn't look like the attack force is going to live for very long. They were able to pick off a lot of these units, and they're kiting around with the aspirants now. But at this point, like, the full frontal attack force over here is now going to descend upon them, and it seems like we'll be in for a very short game. Based on the running time, I will do another run after this, so you'll probably have assumed that based on the length of this video. That being said, we're going to see how much variance even exists within the runs, but based on doing that. So that'll be an interesting idea in general. Generally speaking, though, this kind of thing is fairly standard and fairly straightforward. I won't write off the Terrans just yet, but the odds of him being able to scale up, it's not like he has 3 or 4 bases. He has kind of moseyed on with his build order. So I would be very surprised if he manages to take the W here, or even put up much of a fight, to be honest. But we'll see how long things go. This attack force also, I mean, again, if they positioned shamans intelligently, the attack force would live a lot longer. It does look like that was all that this Protoss player had besides some simulacra. So it's kind of interesting that that's been the way things have gone. I don't think he has a scanner. No, he does not, and he doesn't have any detection, so this Lechizilisk is just going to wreak havoc on them until the AI does AI things and just stop working properly. But this expansion has been completely shut down, so there is something there. Phalanx is out. Legionnaires are going to stack up nicely for them. Yeah, they're actually still doing stuff. I'm quite surprised that they've had units up here. I guess the Lechizilisk like unburrowed and killed itself again, as is somewhat normal for Lechizilisks. And the general split of the kind of units here is working out pretty well, I would say. Just in terms of what units are available right now. And now they are getting their third base. If they get this properly set up, they might be in for the money. Really, it all depends. None of the bases that the Terrans have access to in the early stages of the game really provide a large number of a large quantity of gas. So it'll be interesting to see how they scale up and if they just spam a large number of lower tier units for the time being. They are getting science facility tech. We'll see if they can hold off the small numbers of units that are heading their way. Funnily enough, some cohorts for the Zerg player. That's always nice to see, particularly considering they're fighting against their Zerg worshipping counterparts. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, they're massing up quite the attack force. Some Lakissilisks have snuck around. Kind of interesting. Still no comsat though, which is pretty scary. And now the Protoss are in as well, so they are going to need to position somewhat intelligently here. Oh, they got some Cyclops, okay. They actually should be able to pull this back and at least stymie this initial push. The problem is that the Zerg are now starting to set up defenses over in that base. Okay, yeah, you are getting your fourth, and it's in a kind of a cheeky position. Not sure if the AI will check that. But the bases are starting to be set up for all of these players. The Protoss is getting his third. That's almost done. The Zerg is getting their fourth. So you got to keep that in mind. And the Lakissilisks are in your mineral line, and Ahmed is simply not enough. Not man enough, exactly. At least there's detection over here because of the turret, the watchdog, so there's that. Oh, the return of the king, by the way. Yeah, there's a lot of Masons being executed over here. If only, I mean, if only he had anything. He has a control tower, so he might be getting a Seraph at this point. But yeah, it's quite difficult to make an argument for this player now. He's just going to get overwhelmed and nickel and dimed here, particularly because he didn't bother building any detection. Although, okay, never mind. The Lakissilisк was able to reach some of them. He's just dumb. I like the idea of killing the unit, like, deliberately, basically. That's pretty funny as an idea. Need a couple more Sirens to make good on the passive. That would be pretty useful in this situation, considering the large number of units you're up against. Especially when the Charlatans start coming in, you need that attacking multiple targets thing. Sirens generally are not exactly cost-efficient on just one attack anyway. That being said, the Aspirants are soaking up a surprising amount of damage with their shields. It's one of the reasons why they're a deceptively effective frontline, even though they do have that stupid passive. Okay, we have a Claymore. Surely you're able to kill this Lakissilisк that now has 8 kills. Surely. Oh my goodness. Oh no. Jesus. 11 kills. 12. How embarrassing. Oh, the Tarrasques are coming. Yeah, I'm afraid this guy does not have what it takes. Potential screenshot, but probably not. It's pretty cute to see the Tarrasques running around, just AI dumb pathfinding, but it's actually working out pretty well since they get the spread. Salamanders are a good choice. The AoE provided by them would be really effective if they had just a couple more, like 3-4 Salamanders would actually be enough to potentially turn the tide here, especially since you get those hallucinations that take double damage and also block the pathfinding of the ground units. They can almost turn the Charlatans against your opponent in that sense. And the Claymores are in a really tough position to actually deal with right now, but they are kind of low HP, or this single Claymore is in somewhat low HP, so unfortunately just perpetually brutalized and beaten down. And we just have too many production structures, too many macro cycles available, and a bit of a slow start on our player here. So, yeah, it looks like he's not actually going to be able to pull it off, but he made me think potentially he could have. And even then, I mean, none of his other bases have been shut down. It would be conceivable for him to continue trying to reclaim this area. It's just that the waves of units seem to be pretty endless at this point, and when they break through the initial area, this base is kind of difficult to reclaim, particularly with his dumb layout that obviously isn't, you know, helping him very much. So Doesn't help that the Tarrasques are still dealing a ridiculous amount of damage, but finally that one should be able to go down. There you go. Oh, it was a hallucination the whole time. Even funnier. But yeah, the more units are coming in, Protoss and Zerg fighting alongside each other in a scenario is always quite epic just because it's something you don't see very often, so the novelty hasn't worn off yet. There's something very compelling about just seeing all of the same race doing it for multiple players, though, I will say. In this case, the loss of DPS from kiting on some of these air units doesn't even matter for the middle team because they just have so many things to support. At this point, they have the strength in numbers. The more crowd control that gets deployed is kind of worrisome, like wyverns and stuff, additional phalanxes maybe. You know, it is something that you have to keep watch for, basically. I just heard one of the wyverns actually go down, though, so... And the science facility went down as well, so... Pretty rough, pretty tough stuff. They didn't actually make use of any of the science facility tech either, so I have a feeling they'll probably start to rebuild that at some point. They still kept their command center alive, which is very impressive. And the claymores have come in, so they'll have some crowd control depending on positioning, and just high DPS in general, so that's always nice. They're not going to make it easy. They're not going to go down without a fight, but... Yeah, good luck, my man. There's a couple of charlatans in this area. Jesus. There it goes. Ah, and the convolusks. Yep. Okay, there's going to be plenty of reinforcements coming. Man, the only thing you could ask for more is a couple of empresses, which, you know, hold your breath. They might actually appear, given the hostile tech we're at right now. Well, all in all, this actually wasn't so bad. I guess, you know, I did doubt that the Terran would even last this long, but he managed to sneak a fourth base and hold on to it with just reinforcements from a single scrapyard, which is pretty funny. Obviously, we get some Niduses going on over here. I don't know where this is pointed to. Okay, it looks over here. They'll probably use that to, you know, pour through at a later point. En's favorite death when he gets killed by Rillarokors. The classic. And there you have it. The not so ceremonious end to the Eviz sect Terrans currently. They will be out of here relatively shortly. And there you go. I mean, he's got more units, but the sheer number is too high. Being harassed. They're massing up for another attack. These guys are also massing up for another attack. We got units out the wazoo. Look at all these fucking units. Love the number of gateways I'm seeing here. Don't love the base layout, but you can only fucking get so many. Go ahead and drop a screenshot of that one. Jesus. Yeah, a lot of these are hallucinations, obviously, but still pretty epic to see this number of units on screen. Love to see that. Can't wait to dwarf this in the new engine. And so this is the asymmetric game theoretic stuff I was talking about coming full circle. So obviously, there's an element of potential RNG where you can't encapsulate too many of the decisions in one go. So, for example, if both of these southern players here in the middle gang up on the Protoss, as we saw here, and this Terran isn't good enough to contest them himself, both of the isolated players will fall, and all that will remain are the central players. And that central team dynamic is something that I'm still trying to balance out and master. So I probably do need a more aggressive build from the Terrans. And you probably do need maybe a more defensive build for the Protoss if you wanted AI-controlled games specifically to have varied outcomes depending on performance, as opposed to, you know, just being a potentially foregone conclusion. This is more or less how it's come to fruition in many of the tests, which is why I almost thought I thought against doing another take of this, because obviously, the odds of it being massively different, pretty slim, actually. So the last structure falls, and we're left with the realization that, yeah, if one of the two players on the other side of the spectrum, right, this North guy is going to fall first because he's focused down first, but it could be the Terrans who fall first, and then the Protoss have to do something. Actually, if the Terrans fell first because they were the first target, that would actually make a bit more sense from a perspective of trying to be a bit more back and forth, because the Terrans can defend because they have a decent amount of units, but they weren't really attacking. They weren't active on the map very early on. Whereas the Zerg and the Protoss in the middle can get potentially backdoored by the Protoss in the north, who do have a lot of units in the early stages of the game. So had that been a little bit different, you might have seen something more interesting as an outcome. However, right now in the current state of the map, and again, this map is not publicly available currently, but is something that I will eventually be shipping once I finalize the in-game triggers and actually obviously finalize some custom AI build orders, so build layouts in particular, so that this shit doesn't happen. But that kind of stuff is not inevitable. It's not a foregone conclusion that the middle team always wins. It really does depend on what those outer players do. And as I continue to evolve the game plan for the outer players, that will obviously continue to change how this whole overall thing has taken shape. So I'm very much interested in exploring the what I called the gold rush style, where one of the imbalanced teams is actually stuck in the middle in the crossfire between multiple other players. I experimented with this with UD Commander's birthday map, which I will try to remember to leave a link in the description. Oh, no, it's in Cosmonarchy's release repo, actually. So you can check that out on your own leisure if you want. It's in the campaigns folder. So that kind of stuff is available for people to take a look at from the other areas and other angles I would try to take. But generally speaking, when you flip the script, when you change it up so that everything isn't just a 2v2v2 or a 1v1 or something to that effect, where the teams aren't balanced, you can still get some really entertaining, interesting games. And the area of the actual game being put together, it's not a guaranteed outcome just because one of them seems lopsided. In this case, it's more or less repetitive or reproducible because of the fact that the AI tend to play the game out in very similar ways, because the build orders are fixed and the positions are fixed. But as the AI continues to evolve, and as I improve build orders, and as I continue to tweak certain things, especially about the game state balance as well, you might see radically different outcomes on this map become a little bit more commonplace. It depends on how the map continues to shape up and how the AI continues to shape up, as well as, of course, how the game state is continued to be modified. So I think that's been a lot of word salad, but it's a topic that I think is underexplored, a class of maps and scenarios that I feel is underexplored within custom content, as well as just within RTS content, broadly speaking. So I am interested in hearing what people have to say on the subject. I'm not sure if people have tried this sort of imbalanced team dynamic before massively, or what their results were. But I'm very much interested in hearing what people have to say about it. So I will throw it over to you guys, drop a comment, and tell me what you think. And with that being said, I think it's fair to jump out of this video as we see the AI continue to expand all over the map, which is certainly a sight that I am welcoming and quite happy about. Zerg here, by the way. Oh, and Zealot's here.